If you've watched my introductory video, you'll know that I have an interest in philosophy, but as of yet, I have not really had time to take any major steps to involve myself in it and learn. The reason for this is a mix between time and motivation. When I was very busy in my final year of university, the last thing I wanted to read after a day working on my dissertation was a hard book like philosophy. Having graduated now, however, I have time to read and will try and make more effort to read hard books. I believe that philosophy is a critical element of self-improvement, as it contributes to our personal development, understanding and education. If we want to have a rounded and fair worldview, reading and understanding a wide range of philosophy and other people's ideas is very helpful. As a young person who is maturing and starting to take life a little bit more seriously after years of playing video games and not really taking care of myself, it's about time that I grew up, and I want to share my journey with you. So, where do we begin? Well, there are a few avenues of philosophy that you can go down, but I'd recommend that you do a little bit of research if you're wanting to take the first steps into this as I'm doing. I used a few websites to read up about some of the different types of philosophy, but in particular this guide on Amberblog helped me to get to grips with some of the basics. I'll leave a link in the description of this video. I'm not religious, so theology is out of the question. Maybe I'd read some down the line in the spirit of educating myself upon wider concepts and ideas, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. That's a little way off. I'm interested in politics, but it's probably a little bit heavy for a beginner like me. The same can probably be said for metaphysics, deontology, existentialism and a few others. All of these are absolutely fascinating to me, so I'll make sure that I absolutely come back and read about these topics at a later date. I want to start with something that will give me a good grounding, but not completely overwhelm me and hurt my brain. I also think that I would like to read some actual philosophy first, rather than read about philosophy with a book that will give me some overviews. That comes a little later perhaps, maybe the second book. One of the best and most easily accessible sources that I've enjoyed so far is Jared Henderson. To me, he's like a hairier Yoda and all things philosophy, who has tons and tons of insights into what to read, as well as the purpose of reading and studying all kinds of books in general. One look at his channel will give you tons of ideas on specific books you might want to read for whatever reason. After watching what I think is every single one of his videos over this last year, I've decided that I'm particularly interested in Stoicism. For those who don't know, Stoicism, in very short and simplistic terms, is primarily about self-control and fortitude in not allowing our base reactions, emotions and desires to rule us in the effort of becoming a clear-minded, unbiased thinker. Stoicism, as far as I'm aware, has had a bit of a renaissance in these recent years, especially amongst young men such as myself. Beware, this is just speculation based upon my own observations. I think that it's quite obvious to see why. In a world where many things become commodified and far more accessible, an element of self-control so as to not overconsume or resist things that we know are not best for us is indispensable. It's also useful as a way of understanding ourselves and managing mental health, particularly as it becomes something that's more talked about. I also think that Stoicism can have a poor reputation as being dispassionate and boring. I know a couple of my friends have mentioned this when we discussed it, as the control over all emotions is preached, both positive and negative. I don't know if this is true, haven't read any yet. But even if it is, I don't see myself following that path. Not all advice in books should be taken as gospel. I think that would just be ignorant and quite silly. Instead, I'm going to pick apart each text for the valuable elements and attempt to take them on board and integrate them into my life, whilst potentially also contemplating the things that I don't consider valuable and thinking about why I see them in that way. Maybe I'll be wrong, maybe I'll be right. I think that Stoicism lends itself well to this kind of approach, and doubles up to be an excellent way to enter into wider philosophical thinking and acting as a starting point. From these building blocks of self-control, more specialised works of philosophy can come later. And I've already bought and started to read my first book, and I think many people will be surprised to hear that it's Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. Sorry, Jared, I don't think this was actually one of your recommended beginner's books. This book's an absolute classic though, and already, though I'm only at the beginning of book 3 within it, I've noted down some interesting insights. That's for another time, however. I intend to slowly work through books like these, making notes on anything that I find particularly interesting. On the advice of our old friend Harry Yoda, I'm going to take my time reading them to mentally digest everything, but not get stuck in the mud trying to understand everything on the first go. You can always read them again to tease out all of the nuances. Indeed, this is recommended. So for my first read through, simply getting a good, solid understanding of what is being said is the most important thing. That, however, is all in the future. For now, I'm simply going to do the simplest part of this whole process. Read. Hopefully in the not so distant future I'll have an update for you on how my reading's been going, as well as potentially a book review for Meditations a couple thousand years after it's released. Talk about missing the hype train. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and be sure to follow my Twitter for updates when I upload new videos, as well as look at my website for when I turn these videos into articles that you can read. Thank you again, and hopefully I will see you all again soon. Bye bye.